in today's chapters, very little happens.
Yeah,
more
kinda.
at 11. So, yeah, got chapter 7 and 8 here. It's just your typical start of school year stuff. We get to see a class that we haven't seen before, and then Harry mills around. That's basically it.
Yeah, basically.
Like,
he just kind of bumbles into... I would say bumbles into the plot, but not even any plot really happens. It's kind of just character development.
They were a quick read, which I enjoyed. Usually, when I do these, it takes me a while to sift through everything and see what stuff is worth making note of. And here, it just kind of happened, and it was fine. Mm-hmm. So, chapter 7 is the Boggart in the Wardrobe, which is I feel like they could have just called it the Boggart or something. I don't know, but so. We start off with Malfoy just doing everything he can to milk this stupid Buckbeak injury. The thing was taken care of in a matter of seconds, but here he is days later still acting like, his arm has been practically amputated, and Pansy's like, does it hurt? And he's like, a little, but I gotta be strong. it's so fucking stupid.
Yeah. So we start out in potions, which, I think in all 3 books so far, the Gryffindors and Slytherins have potions together.
Yeah, they just kind of get saddled with each other. It makes you wonder what the Hufflepuff Ravenclaw potions classes are like. They're probably so mild,
Yeah. I mean, Snape probably still bullies them, but he's not, trying to impress his house or whatever, so...
Right. But yeah, so they're doing a shrinking potion, and so what happens is, as soon as class starts, basically, Malfoy is just like, oh, I can't cut up my stuff because of my arm, and then Snape's just like, Weasley, do it for him. And, he just does not give a shit. And so Ron apparently somehow spent 15 minutes, perfectly dicing these daisy roots, which I don't understand how he had the time to do that. Even if class hadn't just started, how the hell do you spend 15 minutes on that shit? But anyway, so... then he just kind of cuts up Malfoy's real quick, and then he bitches, and Snape makes him trade off, and so, yeah, just kind of antics occur. And...
Hang on, where does it say daisy roots?
Oh, does it not?
I'm only seeing roots. Maybe I'm dumb.
Sir, Malfoy called. I'll need help cutting up these daisy roots because of my arm.
Yeah, okay, hang on. I was imagining these as, root vegetable... size roots,
Yeah, that's the thing. It's these things have got to be minuscule. I don't know. It's unless daisy roots is different from the roots of a literal daisy.
That would be really weird.
Yeah.
But anyway. And then he's like, oh, I can't do this either. And Snape's like, Potter, you can skin Malfoy's shrivel fig, which kind of sounds like an innuendo.
A little bit.
And so, Harry and Ron are pissed off, and Harry's like, it's really funny because Malfoy gets really candid. Harry just straight up says to him, I can't believe you're faking the severity of your injury to get Hagrid fired. And Malfoy's just basically yeah, I am doing that. But there's more. I'm also doing it to get out of doing work in class.
Yeah, I think he's just so, how's your pal Hagrid doing? And he's like, Malfoy, is this seriously what this is all for? And he's like, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just Father has a lot of influence with the board of directors, and he's contacted the mystery. It's the dude got fucking booted off the team last year.
I was gonna say.
How does anybody still take this dude seriously?
I mean, it's. I guess it's not a Hogwarts thing. He just has influence in the ministry, right? And
yeah.
Guy
just throws money at stuff,
basically. And this conversation eventually leads to them talking about Sirius Black, and he's like, "Oh, well, Potter, are you going to go after him?" Potter's like, "Why would I go after him?" And this, once again,
it was a case of there's been a lot of instances where something has not quite been a sassy Harry moment because it's more just some light sarcasm. I don't think it really counts, but yeah, it was. Yeah, he just says something like, "Are you going to go after him?" He's like, "Yup, that's right."
Right.
There's a lot of little stuff like that.
And so he's like, what, he's thinking like, seriously, why would I do that? And obviously this connects to when Arthur was like, said the same thing, basically. It said like, don't go after him. And he's thinking, why would I?
But yeah, Malfoy's just like, you don't know? He's like,
right.
Gets all
yeah,
stupid
and so
about it.
I have to question, because we find out later, the reason everyone's worried about this is they're worried that Harry will find out what is actually untruth, that Sirius betrayed his parents and caused them to get killed by doing so. This is not a well-known enough fact just among everybody for like Ron to have heard of it, unless he has. I don't think so.
No, he doesn't know about it in this chapter, at least.
So the only thing I can think of is that Malfoy's dad told him for some reason. Which,
I mean,
I don't know why he would.
I mean, because Draco never shuts up about Harry, so it's like, hey, here's a Harry-related fact for you. It's like,
right.
Hey, you might not have to deal with him much longer because Sirius is after him, and here's why. It's like...
yeah, fair enough.
I don't know, but...
Well, again, though, like, this also brings up another question, is like, wouldn't Lucius know it wasn't Sirius? Wouldn't he know it was Peter Pettigrew?
Probably.
I
don't know.
The Death Eaters would know. Like,
I mean, here's the thing, though, is I think prior to the resurrection, I don't know if Peter was really that much of a Death Eater. I think he was just a piece of shit that, like... I feel like his first moment of, like, doing something for the Death Eater cause was... giving up the Potters, and then Voldemort died instantly, so he didn't really have a chance to establish himself after that.
And he did that out of fear, right? Like, he wasn't loyal to them before that or anything.
I think so. I think it was more just, he wanted to be friends with the biggest bullies on the playground.
Right.
So, yeah.
Don't
know if that's 100% the case, but that's kind of... It makes sense to me, at least.
Yeah, I guess
so.
So then, I don't know if Lucius would have told Malfoy the truth or the lie. It sounds like Malfoy...
I mean, he might have just not known anyway. Like...
Maybe.
But... Regardless, yeah, it is weird how, Sirius is this well-known murderer or whatever. Like, everybody kind of knows what his deal is, but not specifically. It's... Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, they're working on these potions, and there's a point where Snape then starts bullying Neville because his potion came out orange instead of green because he did a couple steps wrong, and he's just like, we're gonna feed this to your toad, and to find out if it works, and if it doesn't, then he'll probably get poisoned, which is maybe not the worst thing he's ever done. But it's still pretty shitty. Like, now, I'm like, there's two sides to this, because on one side, if the potion didn't work, and, it's like, Trevor drinks it and, starts looking sick or whatever, I feel like Snape would give an antidote and not just let the pet die, but at the same time, he's still creating the massive stress on Neville, and, like, bullying him into this shit. And as we see later, Snape is literally Neville's worst fear. And I think that's the point where, maybe this teacher should be reevaluated.
Mm-hmm.
I know Dumbledore has to keep him around, but, like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, Snape's fucking awful. This is not news. But
and it's one of those...
new level, I guess.
It's the eternal debate in the Harry Potter subreddit is, like, I don't know if it still happens, I haven't seen it in a while, but there's always topics that are just like, this is maybe a little bit of a spicy opinion here, but I don't think Snape was actually that great. Because, there's on one hand, you have the people who are like, oh, he redeemed himself in the last book. Oh, it was unrequited. And it's like, okay, but no, he was still pretty fucking awful. And...
yeah.
I mean, that's basically it. Like, the dude sucked ass. He just did some... He was very selfless in one particular regard that was important and helpful to people, but he was a dick while doing so. Like...
And just a fucking loser. Like,
Yeah.
it's one thing to be a douchebag, it's another thing to bully your fucking students. Like, how pathetic.
And plus, there's the fact that, the whole reason he did all of this is because he couldn't get over his childhood crush, but that's way later, so.
On this scene, though, I absolutely need a picture of Snape gently feeding the potion to Neville's toad with a little spoon.
Yeah.
Like, this needs to exist.
It is a pretty good mental image. And, I just made a stupid comment here. I have no reason to bring this up at all other than... So, there was a fanfic I read a while back, and I, started thinking about it recently, and I actually dug it up and reread it. It's called Luna's Year. It's just a very Luna-centric, alternate year 6, written before the actual 6th book came out. But, there's a part where, they need to use Malfoy as bait to, get kidnapped by some Death Eaters, basically. And so, rather than actually having Malfoy be the one in danger, they get Tonks to, transform into him, and there's, people on guard. And so, she, disguised as him, is just kind of, standing conspicuously in the middle of Hogsmeade, waiting to get snatched. And so, while waiting for this to happen, because time is passing and he's just fucking standing there doing nothing, he just starts kind of building a snowman and, making snow angels and stuff. And Harry, makes the comment of, it's very strange seeing him just contently doing this. And I love this image of just, Hogsmeade weekend. Hell yeah, I'm gonna go build a snowman.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So... Yeah, they test the potion, it works, because Hermione helped Neville with it, and then Snape...
loses points on account.
Yeah, he's 5 points from Gryffindor, because I told you not to help him. And then we have a moment of Hermione teleportation that I don't really understand, because, we've established at this point that her schedule makes no sense, the reader doesn't know why yet, and there's, strange happenings with her just kind of, appearing or something. But, what happens here, to my understanding, is they go from potions either to lunch or straight to defense. I don't remember which. And it's she's right behind them, but then suddenly isn't, and then is, suddenly in a totally different place, and it's whoa, what happened? She's oh, I had to go back. And, the way it's worded was, it sounded like an excuse to cover it up, even though it could have been true, but that's not how it was phrased. And so, the whole thing with the time travel is...
there should be multiple copies of anybody who does it, right?
Well, it's okay, so when you turn the thing, it's basically just you at that point then goes back, so, that version of you kind of, disappears, and then now there's two of you up until the point when it was turned, and then...
Yes, exactly.
So, it's if that's the case here, why the fuck is she doing it, right after leaving the class, in the middle of a conversation with them? You'd think
that's questionable.
Yeah, you'd think that if anything, it'd be before you come out of the common room or whatever... So then, you can go off to your 2 different classes or whatever. It doesn't make any sense. It's just there to, be a moment of mystery.
Right. So, yeah, I guess what she would do is she'd walk back to the common room, and then go back to before potions, and then follow behind, kind of at a distance. I'm trying to think what that would then look like, because then she's off somewhere else. And then, I guess what we're supposed to assume is that because we're experiencing, the quote-unquote true timeline or whatever, we're seeing the final Hermione who has done all of the time traveling. In Potions, we saw, whichever version of Hermione did Potions, let's assume it's number 1. Let's assume she's doing 3 classes, right? This is number 1. And then at the end, they must be seeing number 3. So yeah, even if the Hermione they're seeing now is one that is from later in time, it is just the part where she disappears. Really, it should just be. Let me read the part again. Like, does she disappear, or is it just that she walks off somewhere?
She doesn't disappear. It's literally just. Okay, let me find the part. Also, they're talking as they leave the class, and then. Yeah, like, Hermione doesn't answer. They turn around, it's like, where is she? And then they go back. Yeah, she's, like, running up the stairs late. It's just, I don't know, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sentence is just, 1 minute you were right behind us, the next moment you were at the bottom of the stairs. And then she responds like, what? Oh, I had to go back for something. Which, again, could be a valid excuse, but the way that it's, like, portrayed is meant to kind of instill...
I'm trying to imagine here, like... Okay, so it's 5 points from Gryffindor, I told you not to help him, class dismissed. Harry, Ron, and Hermione climb the steps. So, okay, so she's with them on the steps. Harry's still thinking about what Malfoy said. Ron was teasing about Snape. He's mad, and then Ron's like, "Why didn't you lie, Hermione?" They turn around, she's not there. So, like, this is like it's not like she said something and then left. She partially climbed the stairs, and then went back. And then it must have been that she ran back down, out of sight, to use the time turner. And then the fresh Hermione walked from whatever class number 3 or class number N was. And was just lagging a little behind her. I guess she was trying to find a good place to, like, swap over. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not important. I noticed it as standing out. So
I guess she would necessarily need to, like, hide away. That's the thing, right? Is if they're going, are they going straight to?
Well, no, right after this, she says, "Yeah, it's like, I hope they have something good to eat." But
I don't know.
Yeah.
Help us work this out in the comments if you have any better ideas. Let's move on.
Yeah, you have kind of a bit here. It's just
So it's also mentioned that, like, Hermione's bag splits open and, like, it's just full of fucking books, and they're like, "What? Why are you carrying all those? We don't have all those classes today." I don't remember what her excuse is, but I actually also used to do this, though I obviously didn't time travel. I had this bad habit of. And this is honestly still a bad habit of mine today. I still have problems, like, remembering to do stuff on certain days, unless I mitigate that somehow. And so what I used to do when I was in school was I would literally just carry everything I would need for any class subject, all at the same time. I just put all of my school stuff into the same gigantic backpack and carried it all the time. So, if I'm like, oh, I forgot I had Spanish today. It's like, well, no worries. My Spanish book is always in here. Same with every other subject. And several other people would try to pick this thing up and be like, how the hell do you carry this all day? This thing's heavy as fuck. And I'm like, I don't know. It probably did not do any favors for my back, but I managed. The one thing I would still forget was my PE kit, but yeah. I don't think I forgot it that often. I think I was able to remember that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I was kind of the same way. I'm trying to remember, I feel like I might have gotten into this in a previous video already, but they're just kind of, like, so I'm stammering for no reason. In my first high school, we had 10 minutes between periods because there were only 4 a day. And the school wasn't even that big anyway, so you had plenty of time to kind of go back to your locker and get stuff if you needed to. And I think I usually did. And then in the second school I went to, the school was bigger and had less time between classes. And I seem to also remember them specifically having a rule where you couldn't bring your backpack into class. Because it would, like, take up too much space or whatever.
You have mentioned this, yeah.
And
people just put them under their desks.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I ended up doing, and I'm pretty sure I eventually ended up just doing this because other people did and nobody ever cracked down on it, but yeah, it did lead to situations where, because there wasn't really any time to get back to the locker other than, like right before lunch or something, it was just, yeah, you had to carry just a million things around and it sucked. But anyway, so yeah, they go to their first Defense Against the Dark Arts
DADA.
class of the year, and I thought I remembered a bit of, like, you know, rumor spreading about how good this teacher was, but I must have been thinking about Moody. Because they go into the class, and Lupin's immediately like, okay, you don't need your books, so, you know, I'm glad Hermione's been carrying hers around. But yeah, you don't need them because we're doing a practical lesson. And Harry, like, you know, as the narrator comments, like, oh, like, we've never had a practical lesson before other than the, like, disastrous one with the Cornish pixies last year. And so that kind of just got me thinking, like, I don't remember if we've ever actually seen any of Quirrell's classes. And so if there weren't any practical ones, then that to me just reads as every day they just kind of, like, you know, were taught theory, like using the books or just like a presentation and never got to really do anything, which is...
I mean, they could have maybe done some exercises, like, you know, answering questions or like writing essays or like I don't know. I'm trying to think of other shit I did in school. You know, like make a little pamphlet or something. That's
and it's
that
like,
doesn't count as a practical to me.
I guess
I assume when they say
certain...
practical, they mean actually practicing magic with their wands.
Right. I guess in a certain sense, it makes sense with them being first years. Then, you know, they have to kind of get the basics of magic down before they can do anything too dangerous with it. But yeah. So yeah, they head off to just some... I thought it was just an unused classroom, but it's apparently like the staff room.
Well, because in the movie, it's just the classroom. Like, he just brought the wardrobe in there.
They run into Peeves along the way.
Yes. And, you know, Peeves is, like, he's, like, calling him Looney Lupin, or Loopy Lupin, was it? Looney Luna and Loopy Lupin, right?
I think it actually was Looney Lupin.
Maybe it was Looney. Looney would make more sense.
Here we go. It's both. There.
Oh, good. Looney, Loopy Lupin.
Yeah. So once again, you know, Peeves' height of humor. He's very clever.
Exactly. And I think Lupin like smiles at this. It's kind of cute that he's obviously feeling nostalgic for when he was a student. I think that's kind of sweet. And did you want to say something?
I did, but it was fucking stupid because I don't know what made me think of this, but so just the concept of, you know, running into this annoying fucker and having, like, you know, this kind of cordial response reminded me of something very stupid and specific, which was a Nostalgia Critic episode that was a, like, It's a Wonderful Life parody where, you know, he's, like, going around with the angel and seeing what life would be like without him or whatever, and Spoonie took over his role as the critic. And there's a side character called Douchey McNitpick who, you know, just shows up to do exactly what he sounds like and just be an asshole. And, you know, he points out something, and Spoonie is just like, douchey. And, like, you know, it's, like, very, you know, like, pleased with his presence, and they have, like, a pleasant conversation. It's like, what the fuck is this?
Good shit.
And it just kind of reminded me of that.
Excellent. But yeah, so they get to the door, and there's some gum in, like, the keyhole or something, and Lupin's like, "Watch this, guys." What was it? It was like gummy.
It's Wadi-Wasi.
Wadi-Wasi. Yeah. And it just he casts this spell, and the wad of gum just violently shoots out of the hole at Peeves, and I'm like, why is this a spell? Nose. Yeah, it gets stuck in his nose. Why is there a spell with the express purpose of violently shooting a wad of gum at something?
I looked it up. It's not specifically gum. It turns something small into a projectile, apparently.
Then why is it called Wadi-Wasi? Like, it's supposed to be used on a wad of something.
I don't fucking know, but... yeah, so and I'm also just... It's one of those things where... This doesn't matter in the fucking slightest, but I read that passage a couple times, and Lupin points his wand at Peeves and says it, and then that fires the gum out of the hole into at Peeves. So it's like, I guess it just must detect something small nearby, or like you have to focus on it mentally, and I don't know. But, so yeah, that happens, and then Dean responds with, "Cool, sir!" Which just... something about that line just bugs me. Like,
I don't know why. It sounds perfectly fine to me.
Well, so I've never had to like address a teacher as sir or whatever. It's always just, Mr. or Mrs. whatever. And so like that aspect of
That
it
sounds
is
really inconvenient to me. Like if if the class is doing a bunch of work and everybody, every couple of minutes somebody sticks their hand up because they need like some guidance with something. Is it every time it's like Mr. Jones, Mr. Jones?
No, you just
like, I feel
you just kind of don't need to say the name. Like it's just, you raise your hand, you get called on, and then you say your bit.
If you're addressed, like, let's say they're doing a presentation and there's like a class discussion or something, and somebody asks a question. They're like, I feel like it's just natural. But they'd be like, like, sir, is this to do with blah? Like,
No.
I don't know. That's just how you start the sentence. You always just address them like that.
Not in my experience.
Or obviously, if it's a female teacher, you go, Miss.
Yeah, but I mean, really, when you think about it, when you're talking to somebody, like, how often do you actually say their name? Like, the only time you ever really do that is in a group, and
right.
Whenever that happens, I always feel like an asshole. Like, if I'm in a call with you and Joel, and I have to address one of you specifically, I always feel like a douche just saying like, "Oh, Joel, did you blah blah blah?" It's like. Because it's weird, because you don't do that one-on-one. So, I don't know. But
I don't think it's weird. It's a natural thing that is just required to make it clear who you're talking to.
So, yeah, the whole, professor, or in, like, calling people sir or whatever, like, that never was a thing for me. And so, the idea of, like, exclaiming something, and then having to follow it up with sir, to me, just stands out as being awkward. It's like very formal.
I'm pretty sure it's just because you didn't go to a British school. Like this is a very normal like
maybe.
So you might you might not put it at the beginning, but you might be like can I go to the toilet, sir? Like that you just that's just how it's just how you talk to teachers here. I don't know.
Yeah. It's the type of thing that working in the service industry now. I do have to do it occasionally where I'm trying to get somebody's attention because I'm waiting for them to place their order and they're just fucking around on their phone and not giving a shit about the people behind them in line. I'll be like, hey, sir, can I help you? Like, it makes sense in that sense, but...
Which is very weird. I don't think that tends to happen here unless you're talking on the phone with somebody. If I go to like order something, nobody says like sir or ma'am or miss or whatever.
Well, I'm not. The thing is, I don't know what else I would do because I can't just be like, "Yo," like
you could be like, "Excuse me," or just and then start speaking because you're usually only talking one-on-one in that situation.
Yeah. Anyway.
And to me, it's also weird because it's like sometimes you don't know, and I feel like it's probably best not to assume in all cases, but.
So. Anyway, they get to the class, and Snape is just hanging out there for some reason, and his only purpose there is just to, get in another jab at Neville, because, like, they walk into the room, and then he's just like, oh no, I don't want to be around to witness this, just be aware that Neville Longbottom is in your class, and, he... I don't know what the hell he says.
And Lupin's just like, no, he'll be fine.
Yeah.
Neville's like, oh no, I will be. Oh.
Yeah, he specifically is just like, I'll have Neville, I'll have
Neville.
Yeah, I'll have Neville, demonstrate this, and I'm sure he'll do it great. And it's just, but yeah, which I guess is a bit of a moment to show that Lupin is, the opposite of Snape in that he isn't a massive prick and, actually tries to help the students. But so. Yeah, he introduces the Boggart, mentioning that, nobody knows what it truly looks like because it just turns into whatever you fear, so...
So the Boggart is in the wardrobe, just, I think, by coincidence, and they're talking about, like, it turns into your worst fear, no one's ever seen its true form, and I'm like, I was thinking, because I'm like, do we ever find out? Because I think Moody does see one at one point in Grimmauld Place, right? With his, like, eye.
Yeah, he sees it through the wardrobe. But like, cause there's something rattling around in there, and they don't know what, and they're like, I'll have Moody look at it so we can find out before we have to actually open it. And he looks... I think it's actually described as, like, he looks up at it, like, through like from another floor too. Like this eye is ridiculous. It's just like, yep, it's a Boggart, and it is never made clear if he sees its true form or if it somehow detects that he's looking at it and it turns into whatever he fears. But
I assume that like the Boggart has to manually, like it has to like target.
yeah, probably.
And so I think that means that he has seen its true form, which begs the question of what the true form is. I didn't actually look it up because I don't know if there is an answer. I guess I could do that.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that either. I that's one of those things that I've seen brought up in the fan base occasionally is just, Moody knows what it looks like and apparently isn't sharing it with anybody else. But, so I've seen this whole scene as a whole, but I'm glad I said whole as a whole. I've seen it criticized for, like, being a lesson that is like, oh, look, here's this spell that is geared towards fighting a specific creature that will never be useful in any other context. I don't necessarily see the issue with that. It's, I guess, a little specific, but it kind of seems like this entire year is geared towards, like, when you think defense against the dark arts, you usually think like counter spells and protective stuff, and this year is more geared towards like, here's how to deal with specific creatures.
Yeah, so kinda.
You kind of just, they're going through the list, and it's an interesting lesson, but yeah, as pointed out here, it's maybe not handled in the best way. Are you still looking up the Boggart thing?
Yeah, I like this note that says, it could be possible that if someone who has no fear attempts to engage a Boggart, it will not be able to decide what to turn into, and will be forced to show its true form. Who the fuck put that here? That's just, like, random speculation. I assume everybody has something they're at least a little bit afraid of. Even if some people...
except for Will Smith in After Earth, or whatever the hell it is, but...
yeah, I'm not actually finding any details. It just mentions that Moody identified it through a thing, but it doesn't say anything about, like, he saw the true form or what it looked like, from what I can tell.
I kind of just imagine it as, like, a cloud of black smoke.
Yeah, probably. I am seeing a list of known Boggart forms for different characters here, and there's several that include screenshots from, like, the mobile game, with, like, several of the characters having very specific things from that. I like how this, apparently somebody called Ivy Warrington, her fear is a dog version of herself, and it's like, oh no, it's spooky.
Good.
Some of these seem kind of dumb.
I mean, some of the fears we see in this chapter are kind of dumb, but...
That's true.
So, anyway, yeah, as you pointed out, it's probably not the greatest idea to just line everybody up and be like, okay, everybody expose your worst fear to the rest of the class.
Yeah, that seems like a bad idea. Like, Lupin's a good teacher, but this one's kind of questionable.
It seems like it could be the type of thing that would cause some teasing. I don't know if it ever really does, but it seems like it would be liable to. And then, yeah, so the whole bit with Neville is, Lupin's basically introducing the concept of this, where it'll turn into your fear, and then you have to use the spell, think of something to make it funny, which is really odd.
It's very specific.
Yeah, and so this is introduced as, what type of clothes does your grandmother wear? It's mentioned that Lupin's just like, oh, you live with your grandmother, right? And it's like, why does he know this? But
I mean, I assume the wizarding community is so insular that everybody knows about. Well, yeah, no, because Lupin directly knew.
Frank and Alice.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. But yeah, and so I love the stupid stuffed vulture hat. Like, what the fuck? But,
yeah, incredibly specific.
And so I have a clip here that is relevant to this scene.
I say, Carruthers, you know what's very, very funny? A man dressed in women's clothing.
Yes, quite. Ripping good love.
Yes.
So, I just figured, that pretty much says it all there. But they're all thinking of their own fears and, what they can do to make it less scary. You hear Ron talking about, like, taking the legs off the spider. Harry initially
in the movie
thinks...
they changed to it being on roller skates.
Oh, yeah, which is kind of better, honestly.
Yeah.
But, so, this is going to be important for later. Harry's thought process is, like, he's like, okay, well, what do I fear most? Probably Voldemort, but then, like, an intrusive thought of the Dementor kind of comes up, and he's like, oh, no, probably this. And then is trying to think of a way to make it less scary, and doesn't come up with one. And then Lupin's like, okay, we're going to start. And he's like, oh, wait, shit. And so it's like, there probably should have been a moment where he's like, has everybody come up with an idea yet? But anyway, so yeah, Harry isn't prepared for this. And
or just let people opt out as well. Like,
yeah. He's trying to think, what could make it less scary, and can't really think of anything. And so I have an idea, which is also Family Guy related. So we go through the whole class, and there's some stuff that is, I would argue, maybe a little like, how would you? I don't know how to word this. There's an aspect of it where it's just like, we kind of...
This one's overly specific.
Yeah, we got to go through some stuff where there's no overlap, so everybody just kind of has, like, a different spooky creature. There's a mummy, there's a banshee. And then Dean just has a severed hand that's, like, scuttling across the ground, which is, like, what the fuck? Like, yeah, that would be... It would be creepy and unsettling, but, like... Really,
yeah, people do have very specific fears.
Yeah.
I heard about this lady who, like, really didn't like anybody touching, like, her navel, and it turned out it was because that, like, when she was a kid, her mother once told her that if somebody, like, pushed it, then, like, a button, it would, like, detach her legs and they would fall off.
Oh.
So, like...
So not quite Martin's belly button fear, but close. Anyway.
Yeah, go on.
But yeah, so they go through a few of these, and I think the hand was one of the normal ones, because there's a point right after where it just kind of becomes an eyeball, and then Lupin's like, it's getting confused, keep going. And so it's like, the eyeball was not intentional, it just kind of did that. But after the class is over, they're like, man, did you see that mummy? Oh, and the hand. And it's like, so yeah, the hand, I don't know. But, so they all kind of go through this, and then it's going to go to Harry, and then Lupin kind of realizes a problem.
I didn't remember this.
No?
I don't remember him kind of stepping in preemptively, because I remember how it works in the movie. Doesn't it turn to a Dementor briefly, and then Lupin steps in?
I don't remember, because all I remember is... For some fucking reason, Parvati has it turn into a giant snake, and then her way of making the snake more funny is to just completely change it into a, like, demonic clown... like, punching bag thing, which is not related to the snake in the slightest.
No, I don't get it.
And is also in itself pretty creepy looking. But yeah, so it's like, this thing just, like, very dramatically bobs forward and back, and Harry's, like, in front of it, like, grinning for some reason. And then I think there's, like, a shot of Lupin, like, oh, and then he, like, kind of runs in front. I don't remember if it turns into the Dementor, but I haven't seen it in a while.
And then, so it describes how it turns into a silvery orb, but it's very blink and you miss it. In the movie, it's extremely obvious what it is, if you're actually looking out for it. Like, if you...
Well, yeah, because you see, like, the clouds move away from it and everything.
Exactly.
Because after the class is over, somebody's just like, I wonder why Lupin's afraid of crystal balls. So it's kind of unclear what this thing is supposed to be.
And you had a note here as well, which I think you made a mistake and I need to correct.
Okay, well, let me see. It's, because it says... Yeah, everyone looked wildly around to see where it went. They saw a silvery white orb hanging in the air in front of Lupin, who said, ridiculous, almost lazily. Forward, Neville, finish him off, said Lupin as the Boggart landed on the floor as a cockroach.
Yeah, so to me, assume that was just the same thing as the eyeball. Like, it just turned into some other person's sphere or some generic form it's taken before.
I see. Because, yeah, in the movie, I know when he does that, it like, the moon just kind of, like, deflates like a balloon. And, like, flies around. So here, it sounded like he just turned it into a cockroach, but I guess not.
I don't think so.
All right.
And then also they kill the Boggart in the book. Like they hit it enough times that eventually it just like poofs.
Yeah, it like bursts into. It says it exploded into 1,000 tiny wisps of smoke, and it's specifically done in a great way because it's just we get the Snape in the dress again, and then Neville just goes ha.
Yeah.
Good shit.
It just dissolves into the live stream. Yeah, in the movie they just force it back into the wardrobe.
Sorry, it dissolves into the live stream?
Yeah, live stream.
Okay. So yeah, they just killed this thing. I mean,
it's not really like alive, right? It's like one of those weird like let me check.
A manifestation of magic. I don't know.
A Boggart was an immortal, shape-shifting, and non-being.
I see.
That took on the form of its observer's worst fear. So it's just kind of like a thing. It's just a magical thing that just appears and isn't sentient.
Yeah. I guess it's while we're talking about this, this is kind of an interesting way to bring up the idea of like the boogeyman under the bed or whatever, because it does mention that this thing always shows up just in dark places, and it's it's whatever you fear most, so it makes sense to be just the monster under the bed. Is Boggart specifically like a Britishized version of boogeyman?
No, I've never heard of anybody talking about let me see,
because I think I've heard the term used outside of Harry Potter context before.
So, it says that in English mythology, a Boggart or Bogan, Bogle, or Boggle is a household spirit, sometimes mischievous, sometimes helpful. That doesn't sound like the boogeyman.
Ah, okay.
Also, actually, I can clarify, now that I thought about it, the British version of the boogeyman is the bogeyman. Like, people will say.
Yeah, it's just pronounced differently. And spelled with only one O. Yeah. How about the pee-pee poo-poo man?
Don't say it, don't think it. As an unrelated note, but as a kid, instead of being told like if you're naughty, you're gonna get the boogeyman's gonna get you, I was told in our garage there's a Yeji Baba, which is a Slovak witch. My mom would tell me that if I was naughty, then the witch was gonna come and eat me.
Yeah, nothing like scaring kids.
Yeah, I know, right?
Anyway. So yeah, the class finishes. Lupin gives 5 points to everybody that faced the Boggart, and 10 to Neville because he did it twice, and then 5 to Harry and Hermione just for answering questions earlier. So points are just worthless at this point. They're just constantly given out. I mentioned in the first book how the point inflation was gonna go up massively because it's like you would earn like 1 point for performing something well, and you would lose 1 or 2 for doing something, but then you have the moments where they're out of bed and 150 points. But
yeah, it's very true.
It's the points are meaningless. They do nothing. Moving on. You just have a note about the movie here.
Yeah. So I remember that there's this weird. The whole movie is kind of shot very strangely. It was the first one to not be Chris Columbus, and it was the only one done by Alfonso Cuarón.
Yeah,
and
it's very artistic and kind of like pretentious at times.
Yeah, kind of, but not like I think it works for the movie's tone. They made it work. It doesn't feel like too you're not going to be rolling your eyes at like the artistic direction or whatever. It fits it. But I remember for this scene in particular, they had this really weird thing where at the start of the scene, they're zooming in to the like reflective, like there's like a mirror on the door of the wardrobe that the Boggart is in, and it actually goes through the mirror and then plays the whole scene in there. And then when they force the Boggart back in the wardrobe, the camera zooms back into the mirror and then it flips back to like the normal world. And it kind of creates this like weird implication that's like, like, was that real? Like, did this happen in in the real world, or is this supposed to represent some? Like, what is this supposed to mean? I don't know. It's autistic.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I don't know if I ever really noticed it watching it until I saw it pointed out, like, relatively recently. I'm apparently seeing this movie with a live orchestra later this month, so I'll keep an eye out for it.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that.
But, anyway. So, Uh,
I also I put this in. I found I know now. I said I wonder if there's a canon answer for what the Boggart would turn into for Hermione, because Ron makes a sort of joke about it.
yeah, it's like, what would it be? A paper that was graded 9 out of 10? But
and and you said that, you know, we do find out later. As soon as you put that, and I was reading your notes earlier, I remembered it, and then I went to go check, and it was what I remembered. Again, we'll see it later.
yeah.
But
You see it in the finals for this year, right?
I don't remember, but that makes sense. But we'll say it now in case we forget. It's Professor McGonagall telling her she's failed all her exams.
Yeah.
And one last note about the Boggart here before we move on to the next chapter. This is another one of those things in the series. This is one of the things I always think about the series as having a lot of, is these things that the reader can, like, insert themselves into and think, you know, how would this apply to me?
Right.
So we've already had, like, the houses, of course. But now also you can be like, oh, what is my worst fear? What would a Boggart turn into for me? And then later in this same book, we're going to have the introduction of the Patroni, and especially in Order of the Phoenix.
And the Animagus.
And the Animagi, yeah. So, like...
There's a lot of those.
There's all these things where it's like, oh man, what animal form would I turn into? Don't think about that too hard, by the way. That's a slippery slope to being a furry. And Patronus says, even though it says that for most people it just kind of is like, you know, a blast of light and doesn't actually take a spiritual form. Obviously, everybody wants to have a cool spiritual form for their Patronus. So.
Well, the form is when it's strong enough. I don't think it's like everybody has an animal Patronus. It's just not everybody is like skilled enough to actually get it to work.
Well, I guess that's what I mean. Yeah. But I always just interpreted it as like it's not even that some people just, you know, if they try hard enough, but they haven't tried hard enough. I thought some people literally were just incapable of casting, like...
It is mentioned somewhere, I think it might have been like a Pottermore note, that Snape was the only Death Eater to ever have a Patronus. And I guess that's to show that, you know, he has a bit more of a heart than most of them. That,
I guess so.
You know, I take that as he's the only one who ever tried. I feel like, you know, most of the Death Eaters are pretty one note, just, you know, evil bastards, and
yeah,
if they were more fleshed out and had, you know, any sort of character to them other than just, you know, I am bad, I kill people, then I'm sure some other ones probably would too. But
yeah. Also, isn't Snape the only one to ever change what his Patronus is?
I don't know if it's ever mentioned to be anything other than the doe. The only Patronus I remember changing was Tonks.
Oh, it was Tonks's. That's right.
Yeah.
Never mind. I thought it was said that Snape used to have an old one, then changed it to the doe for Lily, but I can't remember. Anyway.
Not sure, because he was obsessing over Lily ever since he first went to Hogwarts, and I doubt he would have known the spell before.
Well, even before that, they were in the same hometown, right?
Yeah. So... Anyway, that's where the chapter ends. It just kind of stops. Like, literally the last line of the chapter is just, you know, what would it be? A piece of homework that only got 9 out of 10? End chapter. Here's the Goblet of Fire. I'll mention that now, that the artwork for this chapter, US version, because the UK version doesn't have artwork, right?
No artwork whatsoever.
Yeah, it's just, it looks like the fucking Goblet of Fire. It's just... It's a goblet with some smoke coming out of it. It's like, okay, what the hell? I didn't even remember what this referred to until we got partway through the chapter and it actually becomes relevant, but...
Mm-hmm. I actually don't, just while we're on that note, I don't remember if I've mentioned this before, but to me, the idea that there would be art in these books is, like, very weird. To me, like, from my limited... granted, I don't read that much, but from my experience, like, books only have art in them if they're for, like, very little kids. Like... To me, I'm like, you know, this is an all-ages book, so of course I wouldn't have art in it, because it's too, you know...
Yeah, I don't exactly have I don't have the greatest frame of reference either, but, I mean, you're mostly right. This is just, you know, a chapter header. It's not like we get full-page illustrations.
I know.
It does remind me that in Fablehaven, every chapter has a piece of header, like, artwork, which is usually just the location they're in. It's nothing more than that, so they often get reused. But every once in a while, like maybe 5 times per book, there is actually a full page illustration. It's just all black and white, but they're nice to have.
So it's like a CG in a visual novel.
I don't know what that meant.
Right.
So
in this chapter, nothing happens.
yeah, pretty much. We start out by just establishing, like, oh, everybody loved Defense Against the Dark Arts, except for Malfoy, because he's an asshole and he just makes fun of Lupin for being poor. But it's like, they learned about fascinating creatures like red caps, and it goes on to explain red caps, which are very boring.
Well, I thought the red caps and flubberworms were in charismatic creatures.
Flobberworms are. Red caps are not.
Okay. Gotcha.
So, yeah, the red caps, they're goblin-like creatures that all they do is they just kind of attack people nearby with, like, a club or some shit, yeah. It's like, they don't really have any magical ability, to my understanding, but they're just little bastards, and apparently they appear wherever blood has been shed. It's like, okay.
I guess if there's enough of it.
Interesting, I guess.
It's like, what if you nick your finger with a piece of paper and you get a tiny bit of blood on the floor? Like, what, is that going to spawn a little fucking...
Nah, I don't think it's like that, but yeah, I just read that, and I liked the setup of just like, oh, they learned about fascinating creatures, such as, this little boring thing. But, and then they mentioned kappas, which, sure. And then we just kind of, we move on to, Harry's not loving a lot of other classes because Snape learned about, his stupid vulture-headed self and is using it to bully Neville even more. Divination is just the same usual shit of Trelawney being overly dramatic. Yeah. Then we move into Cure of Magical Creatures, which had a great first lesson, aside from Malfoy being attacked, or, depending on your viewpoint, especially because of Malfoy being attacked. But Hagrid has given up, and they're now just taking care of flobberworms, which Harry describes as being the most boring creatures he's ever seen. And I looked these things up just to see, if there was anything about them that was, like, noteworthy. And the whole point of them is just to be boring and useless.
Yeah.
They're basically, like...
Well, hang on. Flubberworm mucus is a potion ingredient, right?
It might be. But yeah, I didn't realize this, but in the Fantastic Beasts book, the creatures are all ranked basically 1 out of 5 in terms of danger level. And so, going down the list, for 5, we have known wizard killer, impossible to train or domesticate. 4, dangerous, requires specialist knowledge. 3, competent wizard should cope. 2, harmless, may be domesticated. And 1 is just boring.
Yeah,
and
that's so good.
So the flobberworm is rated as boring.
Yep.
I think these things are like a foot long, and they're just kind of like... They're not like earthworms, they're just kind of like sluggy type of things.
Yeah, that's kind of what I imagine.
They're kind of gross, but yeah, they don't really do anything. And they're apparently just shoving lettuce down their throats.
You have something here that is not in my book, so I guess it's a localization change for some reason.
Oh god, was it?
Yeah, so after that class, we cut to they're going to train for Quidditch. And Oliver Wood is basically trying to hype them all up, and he's like, we've got a great team, but we just had some unfortunate circumstances that kept us from the cup. We're going to get it this year, though.
Yeah, and he's very desperate to win the cup this year, because it's his last year.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he goes... He's going down the line, is like, we've got 3 superb chasers and 2 unbeatable beaters, and a seeker that has never failed to win us a match, and me. And then Fred and George are like, oh yeah, you're a spanking good keeper.
And in mine, it says cracking keeper.
Good. Yeah, I haven't actually looked up any of the localization changes in a while. I guess we'll do like a lightning round of those at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're definitely fast forwarding, because we went from, first week of school, and then this chapter basically just kind of skips through, like...
all of October.
Yeah, and all of September too, right? Because the year starts on September 1st, so... Yeah.
So pretty soon it's going to mention... it's not Halloween yet, but they're talking about how, like, Halloween's coming up because that's when they're going to get, like, that weekend is when they're going to get to go to Hogsmeade. So I had to look it up, and indeed, Halloween 1992 was indeed on a Saturday.
Important information.
Yes.
So there's, basically, this whole chapter is just Harry emoing over the fact that he can't go to Hogsmeade because they announced the first weekend, and they're all just like, oh, it'll be okay, we'll bring you stuff, and everybody's like trying to cheer him up, and there's a great bit of Percy doing a fucking horrible job where he's just like, oh, it's not that great, aside from, well, this thing's pretty cool, and this is good, but aside from that,
yeah.
But
for a second, I was ready for it to actually be like, oh, it's... I could see the older student being like, it's not that great. It's fine. State Fair's not that fun. And then Harry would feel a bit better. Nope, just makes it worse. Good shit.
So there's a bit where they're in the common room and there's just a sudden Tom and Jerry routine that busts out. They're just kind of sitting around, and then Crookshanks just out of nowhere just attacks Ron's bag that has Scabbers inside it. And then, Benny Hill theme starts playing and just, flailing around the room, and cats flying everywhere and the rats running around and hiding and everyone's screaming. It's just this stupid moment where it's just like, there's something wrong with that cat. He heard me say that Scabbers was in the bag and then he knew to go in there. And Hermione's like, no, he probably just smelled the rat. It's a bunch of nothing, but it sets up this whole, rift that Ron and Hermione have throughout the book, where I've actually seen a lot of people like say that, this is a rare moment of Hermione actually kind of being in the wrong and, not being like, obviously the movies make her out to be like flawless. And in the book, she's, a little more humanized, but, she just does not give a shit about Scabbers in this book. Like, the cat is constantly attacking him, and Ron's like, can you please, like, try to restrain your pet so that my pet doesn't fucking die? And she's just like, oh, he's just being a kitty. It's like, no, fuck off. Like,
yeah. God. It kind of tracks, actually, because it sets up maybe that sometimes Hermione can overlook flaws in people or pets, I guess, that she really likes. Because then this kind of carries over into her shallow crush on Victor Crumb, right?
I mean, and Lockhart.
Oh yeah, of course, it was Lockhart. I completely forgot about that. This is a running theme, I guess, is she sometimes kind of overlooks stuff she probably shouldn't.
Yeah. But yeah, so they're already kind of like, mad at each other, not talking for a few days. There's a scene where they're in herbology and they're doing something with a puffapod, which is just a funny sounding thing to me. It just reminds me of cuppa cake.
Yes. Or buffer-fro.
God, I forgot about buffer-fro. There's also, from Drake and Josh, we have both the Monoxapuff gas and the Peruvian puff pepper, neither of which are related at all, but it made me think of that. And then crying.
Yeah, so we mentioned before that in Towns and Tea Leaves in the divination lesson, like, Trelawney's like, oh, that thing you've been dreading will happen on October 16th. It comes around to October 16th, as you mentioned. And she's like, oh, my pet rabbit died. I must have, and Hermione's like, she's like, the omen came true. And Hermione's like, sorry, were you worried about that? Like, was he an old rabbit? She was like, no, he was only a few years old. She's like, then why would you be worried? She's like, well, I must have been subconsciously or something.
Yeah, she's like, basically she's being very, analytical about the thing and making a lot of sense, but, Lavender's sad and doesn't want to hear it, and so...
Yeah, basically.
Then Ron has the line, don't worry, Hermione doesn't think that other people's pets matter very much, which is a pretty low blow, but honestly, it kind of fits the situation.
Yes, but he probably shouldn't have said that to Lavender, because that's not going to make her feel any better. Like, this was purely just a jab at Hermione.
Yeah.
But granted, all of this, hot take, obviously I feel bad for Lavender, it sucks to lose a pet, I've lost a pet. I kind of do sympathize with Hermione here. Like, I might also find it hard to keep my mouth shut in a situation like this when someone's like so obviously wrong about something, and even if I should drop it, like, I don't know how to explain this. It's just,
I mean, it's just different viewpoints. You know, there's moments where you're supposed to be sympathetic, empathetic, and then but then, you know, every once in a while there is stuff like this where it's just like, well, hold on. I mean, actually, really, like, and obviously she's sad that the pet died, but
yeah, I feel like
this whole thing was,
that shouldn't just make the entire
this whole thing was being framed to like be like, look, Trelawney was correct.
Exactly.
It's like, no.
It's like this actually reminds me of a College Humor skit that I should link to you afterwards. Let me find it now, just so I don't forget.
Okay. So here's another weird little callback. So Harry tries to ask McGonagall to sign his permission slip, and she's like, no, I'm not your parent or guardian. I can't do that. Rules are rules. And Dean at one point offers to forge the signature for him, and he's just like, that wouldn't work. I already told McGonagall that it didn't get signed, so, you know, she would know. But it specifically mentions in the text, it says he is good with a quill. And that's such a nothing moment, but it stood out to me because in the first book, I'm pretty sure they went out of their way a couple times to mention that he's a good artist. So I guess that translates to him being good at forging signatures somehow. But it's just like, so what do we know about Dean? He's Muggle-born, and he is like, I don't know, he is good with his hands. Like,
do you think in school, every time you had to get like your parent or guardian to sign for something, that the teachers ever actually bothered to check it against like other stuff they had signed?
Absolutely not. They did. I actually forged a signature for something once. And it wasn't because I wasn't given permission to do the thing. It was just because I forgot. I feel like
that's the main reason people do it.
Yeah, it's like, I had this thing. I don't remember if it was a field trip or what it was, but it was just something that I forgot to have them sign, and it was the day that we had to turn it in. I'm like, oh shit. And I just kind of like, I tried to sign something in not my own handwriting, just, you know, make it look different. And he turned it in. It's just, you know, it was fine. They don't give a shit. So.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so then, you know, Ron and Hermione leave, and there's just kind of an odd meandering quality to this section of the chapter where Harry basically just stumbles into not even the plot. It's just nothing. Like, let me find it.
I know what happens. It's pretty great because he goes into the common room.
Yeah,
and
as
like,
they're leaving,
and it's the first and second years and a few older students that, you know, are kind of sick of Hogsmeade at this point. And Colin wants to like hang out with him, and he's like, "Oh God, no." Okay.
Well, no, hang on.
Like,
hang on. First, he leaves to go see them off in the entrance hall. He goes back to the common room. He goes in briefly. Yeah, there's Colin, like you said. He leaves.
Yeah, he lies because he doesn't want to be around Colin. He's like, I'm gonna go to the library, get some work done. And so then he immediately...
Now we have to leave to prove it.
Yeah, he wanders to the library and he's like, fuck it. And then just kind of wanders off again.
Well, like, hang on, but when he leaves, the fat lady's like, you just came in 5 minutes ago. Why did you wake me up for this?
I do remember that, but I'm wondering why she was even asleep. I don't know. Because it wasn't late at night, right? It was like...
She was taking a nap,
I guess. But yeah, he just kind of wanders off to the library, decides not to go, and then like I forget where he goes after that, but then like he runs into Filch and he's just like, you know, what are you up to? And he's like, nothing. Like literally nothing. And Filch, you know, doesn't buy it. And he goes like, you know, why aren't you off
unpleasantly?
Yeah, why aren't you off with your friends buying? Like, he lists off a few things, including belch powder. Yeah, belch powder. And so I'm like, okay, what the fuck is belch powder? I look it up. It's exactly what it sounds like. You just, you know, I assume you pour it in a drink or something, and it makes somebody burp a lot. It apparently has a long list of ingredients, which is known, I think, because there was a prop for it in one of the movies. And the first ingredient is just mummy. Apparently,
ground up mummy.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, oh my, this was an outrage. I was going to eat that mummy.
Apparently, there was a weird trend of archaeologists eating fucking mummies in like the 1920s
Yeah,
or like the 1800s or whatever.
like,
'Cause they thought it would give them magic powers or some shit.
man,
As we established, people were fucking morons before like 1900 because
they
what
thought
was it
that
we're talking about?
animals would just spontaneously exist. Right?
Generation. Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, if you put a dirty cloth somewhere, it'll just spawn rats. Or if you put a piece of basil between two bricks, it'll just spawn scorpions.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? It apparently took until literally the 19th century to disprove this. Like, what the hell? But anyway.
So eventually he wanders into Lupin, and he's just like, "Oh, hey, wanna come to my office for a cup of tea?" And Harry's just like, "Okay," because he doesn't have anything else going on.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we go into the office. He has a Grindylow there, which is described as being like a little water demon. And Lupin's like, this will make a great lesson because, its hands are very strong, but its fingers are very brittle. Like, you need to break its fingers.
Fingers, face.
And I'm just like, hold on. What the fuck is this lesson where, it's like, okay, here's how you deal with this thing. And you just fucking break its hands. Like, I just, like, what? But,
God.
All right.
Yeah, real good anti-dark magic he was teaching them that.
I mean, also just, I imagine it's the type of thing where it's just, here's what one looks like for reference, and, I'll explain how you fight them off, and not just literally like, here, students, come up and break the fingers off this thing. But that was all I could picture, was like, one-on-one, let's go fight the Grindylow, just like, then repair its hands, and then do it again.
Yeah.
But
sounds like torture.
A little bit. But
So,
yeah, we have a nice chat here.
Yeah, so they're talking about the lesson from earlier, and Lupin's like, he's how does this
Specifically, what happens is Harry's just kind of he's thinking
like
about the Boggart incident and doesn't really want to talk about it, but then Lupin asks if something's bothering him.
Yeah, Lupin's like, anything's worrying you? No, Harry lied. He drank a bit of tea and watched the Grindylow brandishing a fist at him. Yes, he says suddenly, putting his tea down on Lupin's desk. That day we fought the Boggart. And so he's like, why didn't you let me fight it? And he's like, oh, well, I thought it would turn into Voldemort and it would scare everyone. And Harry's like, oh, I honestly wasn't thinking that. I was thinking it was going to turn into a Dementor. And he's like, very wise. The thing you fear most is fear itself. And Harry's like unconvinced. He's like, I'm pretty sure I just found it scary.
Yeah,
but he didn't say anything. But it's nice because,
yeah, we saw in the previous book, Harry is
pretty common.
Worrying about, the Sorting Hat said I would be in Slytherin, and I'm worried that I'm the heir of Slytherin, and Dumbledore asks, is anything troubling you? And he specifically lies. He's like, no, nothing, because he doesn't want to bring it up.
Yeah,
but
obviously Dumbledore keeps with him, but here it's important that, he's deciding, okay, I do want to talk to something about this, and it's the start of this kind of, obviously it really started when Lupin showed up and protected him from the Dementor in the first place, but, like, more generally here, we're seeing the development of this kind of mentor dynamic that they've got going on, which Harry hasn't really had before. Like, Hagrid's nice and a good older figure, but not really a mentor. Dumbledore hardly interacts with him. He's had some other...
Dumbledore's there at the end of the year to wrap things up and explain things.
Yeah, basically. Lupin here is the first time Harry's really had, well, kind of a father figure, even. I think Alfonso Cuarón said he kind of went for that angle in the movie as well, where...
Yeah.
That's,
I think it's an aspect that I always overlooked a bit, because we saw this in a comment on an earlier video that the fandom really loves Lupin and Sirius. I've seen a lot of people actually say that Lupin is their favorite character, and I never saw it, because I'm like, he's fine. He's a good teacher. He's a nice guy. He has kind of an interesting flaw to him that it makes him an interesting character, but he never really stood out that much to me. But I think it might just be the mentor, father figure aspect that
probably
kind of stands out. I don't know. To me, I never necessarily saw it that way, but I can kind of see it.
Yeah.
And so here's this is a fucking weird one. So when I read these chapters to write my notes on them, I have the books like on my shelf here, but I always just read the PDF because it's just kind of more convenient. I can kind of flip between that and the document that I'm writing the notes in and stuff. And apparently I've read these books so many fucking times that I just noticed when a sentence was off.
Yeah.
Because in the scene where they're talking here, Lupin basically just says, I don't think it would be a good idea for Voldemort to materialize. I thought people would panic. In the PDF that I have, it says, but then, said Harry honestly, I remembered those Dementors. And I read that. Yeah, I read that line. I'm like, hold on. That doesn't sound right. And I looked back. I double checked the text. I'm like, what do you mean, but then? Like, that's not following anything up. So I got my book and I opened it and I look inside here and the same, Lupin has the same sentence. And then following that, I didn't think of Voldemort, said Harry honestly. I remembered those Dementors. I'm like, the fuck? Why did they change it?
And then I argued with you about this.
And so, there's multiple steps to this, actually, because there's that aspect where I'm like, did they mess it up? And then I Googled the sentence in its entirety from the PDF, and there are copies of the book that have it that way, with just but then. And because I saw a Reddit thread where someone's like, there's like a misprint. And honestly, I think it should be both of them, because when they were in the Boggart lesson, Harry did think of Voldemort initially, and then realized, oh, no, actually this. And so I feel like it would make sense for him to say, I thought of Voldemort at first, but then I remembered those Dementors. And it's kind of combining the two sentences, and I don't know why it got, split.
And I argued with you about this, because I was like, no, it totally makes sense for him to say, I didn't think of Voldemort, because it's he's basically saying that he wasn't thinking of him, that the answer to what is his fear that he landed on was Dementors. You're gonna shit. I just looked at my copy. I did think of Voldemort at first, Harry, said Harry honestly, but then I remembered those Dementors.
Oh my god. Okay, so the British version has the full thing, and then it just split into fucking red and blue version, where...
And then they also changed one of them to say didn't instead of did.
What the hell? What happened here? And there's been cases where they've, obviously there's localization stuff, but then there's also been cases where they've corrected problems, like the order of James and Lily coming out of the wand in the Battle of Goblet of Fire. They changed that because it was wrong. This, I don't understand why they fucked it up. The first version was fine.
Yeah, it was. I don't know, they did surgery on a page, I don't know what to tell you. I'm also noticing here from your screen, from your picture of your book, what is that, page 155?
Yeah.
This part is midway through page 117 for me. I find it interesting that there's such a disparity there, I guess.
Yeah, it's just the font size, I think.
More closely. And also I'm noticing you have a giant gap at the bottom of your page between the bottom of the last sentence and then the rest of it, and then just smack in the middle you got the page number. For me, there's very little room between the top line and the top of the page and the bottom line and the bottom of the page, and then the page number is in the top right corner, or top left corner if it's the left page.
Yeah, I don't know, just differences in how they presented it. But
anyway.
So yeah, just weird little bit there. Overlooking the small aspect of this conversation where Harry is surprised that Lupin is actually saying Voldemort's name, because nobody else does other than Dumbledore. So I guess that's kind of establishing that, we don't know what the Order of the Phoenix is yet, but, he had a history with that. I'm trying to think, do most of the other Order members actually even say Voldemort? I don't think they do. But anyway, so yeah, this is the stupidest shit, and I mentioned this in the last book. It was unrelated to what was going on, but I'm going to mention it again, is just, for some fucking reason, when this whole thing is described of the Boggart turning into a Voldemort and, causing a ruckus, the way that I imagine this happening is the dude, he's like the size of Danny DeVito. He's just like, this little short guy kind of running amok, like, flailing his arms and yelling and being like, ha ha ha, blah, and, just being a menace, but not causing any actual problems. And it is this.
I mean, the Boggart can't actually hurt anyone, right? Like, they can only like something and just kind of exist.
Probably, I don't know, but like, I don't know what the fuck made me think of this, because nothing supports this. But I just imagine it happening, and it's such a hilarious visual that I can't see it any other way, and I wish it fucking happened, even though it would make no sense.
I got nothing.
I mean, that's the thing. There's no explanation. It's just this is my headcanon for what would have played out.
So it's at that point that Snape comes in. He's got a potion for Lupin, and we'll find out later that this is like Lupin's like, oh, I haven't been feeling well. I'm kind of sick. This is gonna help me feel better. It's a half truth. It's actually the potion that suppresses
the Wolfsbane potion.
Yeah, suppresses the werewolf curse. Which I forgot what it was called. So in my note I called it anti-lycanthropics, which I think is funny. But it just kind of clicked for me because he was like, oh, I've been having Snape brew them because it's a very difficult to brew potion. And I'm like, sounds like it would be expensive then, normally. Is that why he's poor? Is he has to pay out the ass for his fucking Wolfsbane potion? And probably there's like a extra charge on it being discreet. I mean, maybe not directly, but if you're needing to get something discreetly, it can often be more difficult and expensive. Is that why he's fucking poor? Probably.
It might not hurt, but I'm pretty sure it's just because it's really hard to get work as a werewolf because everybody's afraid of you.
Yeah, I forgot about that. So yeah, that sucks. Meanwhile, Harry is just like, oh man, Snape sucks so bad. What if this is poison? Oh shit. And he it says that he almost has a mind to knock it out of Lupin's hand, which I like to imagine a universe where that happens and Lupin gets fucking pissed.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. He just kind of warns him. He's like, they say Snape would do anything to get the Defense Against the Dark Arts position. Lupin's like, oh really? Anyway.
Yeah. Because from Harry's perspective, at the opening feast or whatever at the start of the year, he sees Snape staring daggers at Lupin, and I guess he has a reason to suspect that there's some foul play here. But yeah, it's another instance of just Snape sucks, and so I think that everything bad that could happen from him will. So
I do like this recurring thing of thinking that Malfoy and or Snape are responsible for things going on in the stories, and they keep being red herrings. And then finally in book 6, he's correct, but no one will believe him.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. You have a stupid joke here.
It's such a non-joke. It's just, I said, because we have the Wolfsbane potion here, I said Team A needs to brew that, while Team B does belly and Team C does chains.
If you get that joke, leave a comment.
Yeah. Anyway, I was gonna say that I was gonna make some comment about does the Wolfsbane potion emit an aura that shrinks people down? But no, that's the gastric juices. Right. Anyway, so yeah, the chapter just sort of runs out of steam pretty soon. Good. Yeah, so Ron and Hermione get back. They give Harry a whole bunch of crap from Honeydukes. They've obviously had a great time. Harry's, still upset that he didn't get to go, but
yeah. They're talking about. They mentioned the butterbeer they had. Obviously, they couldn't bring him that. They're like, "Oh man, you should try it when you get a chance." I've tried the real life butterbeer that they sell at the various Harry Potter themed attractions. Because I went to the Wizarding World exhibit in London, I think. 3.5 years ago now. Jeez. I didn't really like it, honestly. I don't remember what it tasted like. I still have the plastic mugs though that we bought.
Yeah. I'm curious what it would be like, because I don't know what regular beer tastes like, and I know it just smells really shitty. It's also, like, we're getting into this too early, because we're going to see more of it later on, but I do think that it is, like, very, very slightly alcoholic, and it's the type of thing where it's like, it's fine if kids have it anyway, but I'm such a stick in the mud that might prevent me from tasting it.
Well, the one they serve in real life is an alcoholic, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, it's not?
I don't think so.
Because
let me double check.
Because I know that there's actual drinks in real life that, like, contain, like, fucking 1% alcohol, and you couldn't possibly, get any effects from it, but, so it's like, it's okay if kids have it anyway, but it is technically there, I don't know. Because I know in Goblet of Fire, Winky gets drunk off of it, and, they mentioned, like, Harry's just like, oh, like, it's not strong, and Dobby just goes, oh, it's strong for elves, sir, but...
I'm finding various recipes for it that don't cite where they get the recipe from, and because it's real, like, they serve it at the place, so surely...
The thing is, I'm pretty sure it's actually a real thing even outside of Harry Potter anyway.
I don't think it is.
Because there's ginger beer. I thought this was just kind of something similar.
I mean, it might be based on it name-wise, but I didn't think it was.
I guess we'll check and come back with more info on that later, because I thought I remembered reading that it was a thing. I just kind of imagine it being like a very sweet, like, butterscotchy type of thing. But
I don't remember. It may be based on buttered beer, which was a real drink.
I see. My last note for this chapter is just, he's still talking about it! Because...
the Wizarding World of Harry Potter sells bottled non-alcoholic butterbeer. I assume it's the same recipe at the place that I had it.
Okay. But yeah, there's just... It's brought up for absolutely no fucking reason. It's just... let me see. It's after they... Yeah, after everybody gets back from Hogsmeade, where the hell is the line? Okay, yeah, they go to the Halloween feast. Nothing really happens. It's just, Lupin's perfectly fine, and Harry's like, oh no, okay, he wasn't poisoned. And there's, like, entertainment provided by the ghosts. And then it just says, it had been such a pleasant evening that Harry's good mood couldn't even be spoiled by Malfoy, who shouted through the crowd as they all left the hall, "The Dementors send their love, Potter." And it's just like, okay, it's been 2 months, and he's still not shutting up about the Dementors thing. Also, what fucking relevance did this have? There were no Dementors anywhere. Like, why were they mentioned? But, so, the chapter wraps up with them going back to the common room, and
they get stuck, because no one could get through the portrait door, for the Gryffindor common room. So it's like, what's going on? Percy asks somebody to go get Dumbledore. He has everybody search around for where the fat lady might have gone, because that's the problem, is she's not in her painting.
Yeah.
Did they mention
it's
slash marks?
Yeah, it's been slashed. Like, there's... Yeah, pieces of canvas are, like, missing or drooping off of it or whatever.
And they eventually find her, and she's like...
Well, no, they don't. They find Peeves.
Oh, no, they find...
Yeah, and so there's a bit with Dumbledore shows up, and Peeves won't go out of his way to antagonize Dumbledore, but he'll still kind of be an ass. It says that he adopted an oily voice that was no better than his cackle. And so, he's still just being annoying and mischievous or whatever, but he's just like, she's quite the mess. Yes, I saw her running away. He's very angry, that Sirius Black. And then that ends the chapter.
Yeah, so. It's nice cliffhanger, I guess, but otherwise, this chapter really was just a nothing burger.
A little bit. It established some Lupin stuff. It wasn't a bad chapter, it just wasn't the most action-packed.
Yeah. Should we do comments?
Yeah.
So I don't remember exactly what we said about, like, the options or the electives or whatever. I think you said something about like you assume they wouldn't run more than one of them at any point, and this comment says like they figure depending on schedules they probably would do at least 2 instances of the same lesson, like just with different groups. Like it's certainly the case here that the same. I think because you were saying that like a teacher like sticks with the class through each year or something, right? As they like for any given subject. Whereas,
I mean,
you might change every year.
I had a whole long, complicated explanation for why I
Right.
thought that. It was just, it's because, like, for any of the core classes, the teacher only has to cover it once per house, or sometimes, like, twice if the houses are doubled up.
Oh, here's a good example. Sorry, I think for example, art I think was obviously an elective or an optional, whatever you want to call it. I'm pretty sure there were multiple art teachers that still taught the same like group of like year group, or maybe the same one taught multiple classes. I'm pretty sure there were multiple art classes in the same year. I might be wrong about that, but like, yeah, I think that was the thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the solution probably just is that they cover the same things like a few times for different periods, but
and it was also pointed out that I don't think we covered this, that in the movie version of Hagrid's class, he pretty much ignores his own advice and makes Buckbeak seem less dangerous as a result. I don't really remember this. What does he ignore? Does he like not bow to it or something?
I don't remember that either.
I was hoping you would.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. If you left that comment, feel free to elaborate because I don't remember what you're talking about. Somebody else just said they're looking forward to the long tangents like a year from now about the time turners. I don't think it'll take us that long. We've been doing these every like 3 weeks on average, so
we'll get there eventually. How many chapters is this book?
Let's see. I'll post again. That is chapter 22, and we have done...
So 11 of these if we keep doing 2 per video.
Yeah. Let's see. We've just done 8 chapters.
Yep.
So that means 9 more videos at most. Well, at least, sorry.
It'll be 3 years.
9 times 3 is 27 weeks, is like...
half a year.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so.
Until we get distracted by porn for 6 months, but
yeah, probably. That almost certainly will be at least some discussion about the logistics of the time turners, though, because they are highly questionable. I guess that's basically it that we really need to respond to.
Alrighty. So next time, probably more of the same. I don't specifically remember what happens next.
I think there's... Ooh, hang on. Oh no, that's... Ooh, we're actually going to deepen the plot with Sirius Black and stuff, and
we get the Marauders map. Okay.
Yeah. We start to learn a bit about the Marauders. I forgot about that whole broader aspect. So yeah, that should be fun.
Yeah.
See you then.
Big.